Hello. My name is Vikram Kushwah. Um, I work as an art photographer where I create self-initiated art projects and sell my photographs as limited edition art prints. And I also work as a fashion photographer where I create fashion editorials for magazines. But tonight, I'm mainly going to talk about my latest photo series, The Education I Never Had. But I think for me to talk about that, it's important to very briefly touch upon the work that I do in general as a photographer. So normally, it can take quite a bit of time to explain the complexities within my photographs. But I've often said that my pictures are best understood when they're experienced rather than when they're explained. So these are a few examples of the kind of pictures that I create. So they're quite surrealistic in nature. They're very intricately staged. I draw a lot of inspiration from the surrealists, and especially their practice, which involved digging deep into the subconscious through half-awake and half-asleep states, also known as lucid dreaming. So not all my work, but some of my ideas have come from those kind of practices. My work is also related to Sigmund Freud's theory on the philosophy of the uncanny, so the feeling of the uncanny, which is it's that very uneasy, unsettling feeling that you get without knowing what's really wrong with what you're looking at. So it's just under the surface, but you can't quite put a finger on what it is. So it's quite, again, it's quite surreal, and it plays with your mind a little bit. I also draw a lot from my childhood storybooks, which, as you can see, were quite dark and quite magical. And I also like to see my photographs as single-frame short stories that are not well-defined. They're quite ambiguous, but they're also directional. So I always invite viewers to sort of reach their own conclusions. So even the elements within the photographs are not defined. So I'm never going to define what the branches mean, or what the owl means, or what the animals mean. I don't define what led to these situations, and I don't define what happened afterwards. It's all the pieces of information are there, and it's basically up to you as the viewer to interpret my photographs. Now, for the main course, I'm going to talk about my latest photo series titled The Education I Never Had. And to talk about this, I will have to go and tell you a backstory which started in 1983, which is the year I was born. I was born into a very poor household. My parents lived in a one-room shack in a rural area just outside of New Delhi in India. And my father taught in a government school in an adjoining village. And when I was 2, he was earning something like £5 a month. When I was 2 years old and I had just started to learn how to speak, my cousins would take me out into the village, and I started picking up some really horrible words, um, swear words and profanity, because, they're village boys, teenagers, that's how they speak. And when my father found out about this, he decided to send me to a boarding school. And not just any boarding school, he decided to send me to one of the most elite boarding schools in India, in the foothills of the Himalayas. He sold his inheritance, he took massive bank loans, and he sent me off. Fast forward 35 years, which is last year. So I've been showing him my photography work over the last 8 to 9 years. So all the pictures that you've seen before this photograph, I've been showing those to him. And he doesn't really understand them. I talk about my achievements. I talk about the fact that my photographs are being exhibited at the National Portrait Gallery, or one time Kit Harington bought my work. I told him about that. And interviews and talks like this one. And he doesn't really get it. He's happy and excited because I'm happy and excited, not because he understands my work. And he says to me, Vikram, I think you're a good photographer, but why don't you take pictures of beautiful flowers and forests and mountains and rivers? Why do you do this? Like, why is it so dark and grim? And I understand that. I understand because there's been such a huge divide between his life and my life over the last 35 years. And so what I wanted to do most was to return. And as in any journey, there's a point of return, and the return can either be spiritual or emotional or physical. For me, it was all of these things. A return where what I wanted most was to understand his sacrifices and to go back and take a glimpse into this world that he had been living in for 35 years, the school that he had been teaching in for 35 years. And so I arranged this visit with him. For the first time in my life, I visited this school. He still teaches there. He's going to retire next year, so I had to do it this year. So earlier this year in March, I was there, and I photographed these beautiful children, the staff members, the school buildings, and I really got a glimpse of what his life has been every single day for the last 35 years. So he doesn't go anywhere. It's home and school every single day for six days a week. So, I mean, this was a really eye-opening experience for me because, they're such beautiful children. A lot of them are talented, skilled, but I was also really sad because the sad truth is that they're also poor. So a lot of their talents and skills may never be fulfilled just because they're poor. My dad warned me about some of the questions that I might be asked by complete strangers. And this teacher asked me things from, how much do your shoes cost? And then suddenly to, why don't you have any children yet? But it wasn't offensive. I just learned something very different from my world, how people are in his world. That's my father there. He didn't know what I was doing, so just stood there very straight. A very important photograph because, as I said, maybe I didn't say that, the school does not have electricity. The school has dirt floors, so what you can see outside, the same floor is inside the classrooms. So no electricity, dirt floors. When it gets too cold inside, they come out, the students come out and sit in the sun. When it gets too hot, they come and sit under the shade of the tree to take their lessons. That's the school building. Believe it or not, that's the room they call their library. I mean, it's both humorous, but also, I don't know. sad in a way because I had been studying physics and playing cricket with sons of diplomats and film stars. This is the staff, full strength. Nobody is missing. That's the staff. This is the one and only female staff member. A lot of these kids don't necessarily come there to study. They come for the one free meal that the government provides every single day. Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's the end of the slideshow, but I would like to say that for me, it's not just a portrait of all these children and the staff members and the school, but it's also a portrait of all the sacrifices that my father has made for me. It's also a portrait of what my life could easily have been, because every member of my family has been educated in a school like that, except for me. I went to this really elite boarding school. I studied fashion after that. I moved to London to pursue an education and a career in photography. And I'm just living this really privileged life and giving this talk in front of you amazing people. So it's just a reminder of what my life could easily have been. But because of my father's very progressive thinking, it's not. And so I'm just really happy to share this story with you guys. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you.